The second article that I chose to reflect on was Whites Think About Discrimination Against Whites is a Bigger Problem Than Bias Against Blacks. This article I read during class, and it really took me by surprise and kind of left me speechless in the beginning. I wasn't really sure what to think about it, and I never really heard of this issue or ever thought that whites would feel this way. Um, I can say, like, I've never even thought about this or anything like that. And the facts and statements that were included in this article just really took me by surprise again, and I just couldn't really wrap my mind around it because I'd never heard of really any of these issues besides one. And I think like one of the biggest and most important statements or facts that was stated was that black and whites look at the same facts and see different truths. I can definitely see how that is true, especially this really relates to one of the questions that we were asked in the beginning of the semester is if we thought that racism was still an issue and what our thoughts were on it. And I can say when I answered that question, I said that I didn't really think it was an issue, or I didn't like find myself to be necessarily racist, and it didn't really play a big role in my life. And I can see how after this class that I'm completely wrong, and this class like really showed me that racism is still prominent in society, and we still need to work on it as a group. And then another fact that really stood out to me was that white perceptions of racial disparities diverge far from reality. And we talked about this in class. It was included in the digital quad, and I just found it to be really, really interesting. And an example of that would be that 2/3 of blacks think blacks make less money, which is true to this day. And only 37% of whites knew this to be true. So but whites thought that blacks were making the same amount of money as whites, and they just like didn't see that blacks were still being discriminated against, and they just like didn't know this was happening. And I just found that to be really surprising, but I found myself to be a part of that group as well. And I guess that was like kind of upsetting once I realized that. Another like point that I found to be really important was that white people believe the issue of racial bias against blacks has effectively faded as a national issue. And I just like didn't really, I guess, know what to take away from that. And I'd never really heard of it or really thought about it, but looking back, it should be something that we're thinking about and aware of and trying to stop. And then that leads into the last point was that polls found that white perceptions of anti-black bias has diminished, and that whites are more likely to think that anti-white discrimination is a bigger problem than bias against blacks. And when I read that, I just like didn't really know what to think, or like I was hoping that like I could make it, because I just think it sounds so like ignorant in a way, I guess. I don't really know if that's appropriate to say, but I guess this article just like really took me by surprise and really opened my eyes to what's still going on in the world and the issues that we will face, especially with like dealing with parents and students, and how we can address these issues with them.